The reign of King Edward III, commonly shortened to Edward III, is an Elizabethan play printed anonymously in 1596. It has frequently been claimed that it was at least partly written by William Shakespeare, a view that Shakespeare scholars have increasingly endorsed. The rest of the play was probably written by Thomas Kyd. The play contains several jibes at Scotland and the Scottish people, which has led some critics to think that it is the work that incited George Nicholson, Queen Elizabeth's agent in Edinburgh, to protest against the portrayal of Scots on their London stage in a 1598 letter to William Cecil, Lord Burleigh. This could explain why the play was not included in the first folio of Shakespeare's works, which was published after the Scottish King James had succeeded to the English throne in 1603. Characters: the English King Edward III, Queen Philip, his wife, Edward, the Black Prince, their son, Earl of Salisbury, partially based on Sir Walter de Manny. Salisbury was deceased by the events of the second half of the play. Countess of Salisbury, Salisbury's wife, Earl of Warwick, her father, Sir William Montague, Salisbury's nephew, Earl of Derby. Lord Audley, portrayed as an old man, though he was historically no older than 30 at the time of the play. Lord Percy, John Copeland, Esquire, later Sir John Copeland, Lodowick, Kind Edward's secretary. 2 Esquires. Herald, supporters of the English Robert, Count of Artois, partially based on Sir Godfrey de Harcourt. Artois was deceased by the events of the second half of the play. Lord Mountford, Duke of Brittany. Gobin de Grace, French prisoner. The French King John II. Some of his actions in the play were actually undertaken by his predecessors King Charles IV and King Philip VI. Prince Charles, Duke of Normandy, his son. Prince Philip, his youngest son, Duke of Lorraine. Villiers, Norman lord, Captain of Calais, another captain, mariner. 3 heralds, 2 citizens from CRE acute CY, 3 other Frenchmen, woman with 2 children, 6 wealthy citizens of Calais, 6 poor citizens of Calais, supporters of the French King of Bohemia, Polonian captain, Danish troops, the Scots King David the Bruce of Scotland, Sir William Douglas. 2 messengers. Synopsis: King Edward III is informed by the Count of Artois that he, Edward, was the true heir to the previous King of France. A French ambassador arrives to insist that Edward do homage to the new French king for his lands in Guyenne. Edward defies him, insisting he will invade to enforce his rights. A messenger arrives to say that the Scots are besieging a castle in the north of England. Edward decides to deal with this problem first. The castle is being held by the beautiful Countess of Salisbury, the wife of the Earl of Salisbury. As Edward's army arrives, the rampaging Scots flee. Edward immediately falls for the Countess, and proceeds to woo her for himself. She rebuffs him, but he persists. In an attempted bluff, the Countess vows to take the life of her husband if Edward will take the life of his wife. However, when she sees that Edward finds the plan morally acceptable, she ultimately threatens to take her own life if he does not stop his pursuit. Finally, Edward expresses great shame, admits his fault and acquiesces. He dedicates himself to use his energies to pursue his rights and duties as king. He and the French king exchange arguments for their claims before the Battle of Crécy. King Edward's son, Edward, the Black Prince, is knighted and sent into battle. The king refuses to send help to his son when it appears that the young man's life is in danger. Prince Edward proves himself in battle after defeating the King of Bohemia. The English win the battle, and the French flee to Poitiers. Edward sends the prince to pursue them, while he besieges Calais. In Poitiers the prince finds himself outnumbered and apparently surrounded. The play switches between the French and English camps, where the apparent hopelessness of the English campaign is contrasted with the arrogance of the French. Prince Edward broods on the morality of war before achieving victory in the Battle of Poitiers against seemingly insurmountable odds. He captures the French king. In Calais, the citizens realize they will have to surrender to King Edward. Edward demands that 6 of the leading citizens be sent out to face punishment. Edward's wife, Queen Philip, arrives and persuades him to pardon them. Sir John Copeland brings Edward, the King of the Scots, captured in battle, and a messenger informs Edward that the English have secured Brittany. However, the successes are undercut when news arrives that Prince Edward was facing certain defeat at Poitiers. King Edward declares he will take revenge. Prince Edward arrives with news of his victory, bringing with him the captured French king. The English enter Calais in triumph. Authorship. In 1596, Edward III was published anonymously, which was common practice in the 1590s. Additionally, Elizabethan theatre often paid professional writers of the time to perform minor additions and emendations to problematic or overly brief scripts. No holographic manuscript of Edward III is extant. The principal arguments against Shakespeare's authorship are its non-inclusion in the first folio of Shakespeare's plays in 1623 and being unmentioned in Francis Meres' Paladis Tamia, a work that lists many of Shakespeare's early plays. Some critics view the play as not up to the quality of Shakespeare's ability, and they attribute passages resembling his style to imitation or plagiarism. Despite this, many critics have seen some passages as having an authentic Shakespearean ring. In 1760, noted Shakespearean editor Edward Capel included the play in his Prolutions, or select pieces of ancient poetry, compiled with great care from their several originals, and offered to the public as specimens of the integrity that should be found in the editions of worthy authors, and concluded that it had been written by Shakespeare. However, Capel's conclusion was only supported by mostly German scholars. In recent years, professional Shakespeare scholars have increasingly reviewed the work with a new eye, and have concluded that some passages are as sophisticated as any of Shakespeare's early histories, especially King John and the Henry VI plays. In addition, passages in the play are direct quotes from Shakespeare's sonnets. Most notably, the line, "Lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds," and the phrase, "scarlet ornaments," used in Sonnet 142. Stylistic analysis has also produced evidence that at least some scenes were written by Shakespeare. In the textual companion to the Oxford Complete Works of Shakespeare, Gary Taylor states that, of all the non-canonical plays, Edward III has the strongest claim to inclusion in the complete works. The first major publishing house to produce an edition of the play was Yale University Press. In 1996, Cambridge University Press published an edition 2 years later as part of its new Cambridge Shakespeare series. Since then, an edition of the Riverside Shakespeare has included the play, and plans are afoot for the Arden Shakespeare and Oxford Shakespeare series to publish editions. Giorgio Melchiori, editor of the new Cambridge edition, asserts that the play's disappearance from the canon is probably due to a 1598 protest at the play's portrayal of the Scottish. According to Melchiori, scholars have often assumed that this play, the title of which was not stated in the letter of 15 April 1598 from George Nicholson to Lord Burleigh noting the public unrest, was a comedy. But the play's portrayal of Scots is so virulent that it is likely that the play was banned, officially or unofficially, and left forgotten by Hemingway and Condell. The events and monarchs in the play would, along with the 2 history tetralogies and Henry VIII, extend Shakespeare's chronicle to include all the monarchs from Edward III to Shakespeare's near contemporary Henry VIII. Some scholars, notably Eric Sams, have argued that the play is entirely by Shakespeare, but today, scholarly opinion is divided, with many researchers asserting that the play is an early collaborative work, of which Shakespeare wrote only a few scenes. In 2009, Brian Vickers published the results of a computer analysis using a program designed to detect plagiarism, which suggests that 40% of the play was written by Shakespeare with the other scenes written by Thomas Kyd. Harold Bloom rejects the theory that Shakespeare wrote Edward III, on the grounds that he finds nothing in the play as representative of the dramatist who had written Richard III. Attributions: William Shakespeare, Edward Capel, A.S. Cairncross, Eliot Slater, Eric Sams, George Peele, Tucker Brook, Christopher Marlowe, with Robert Greene, George Peele, and Thomas Kidd, J.M. Robertson, Michael Drayton, E.A. Gerard and H.W. Crundell, Robert Wilson, S.R. Golding, Thomas Kidd, W. Wells and G. Lambrechts, Robert Greene, R.G. Howarth, William Shakespeare and one other, Jonathan Hope, William Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe, Robert A.J. Matthews and Thomas V.N. Merriam, William Shakespeare and others, Giorgio Melchiori, Thomas Kidd and William Shakespeare, Brian Bickers. Performance history. The first modern performance of the play was on 6 March 1911, when the Elizabethan Stage Society performed Act II at the Little Theatre in London. Following this, a BBC broadcast an abridged version of the play in 1963, with complete performances taking place in Los Angeles in 1986 and Mold in 1987. In 1998, Cambridge University Press became the first major publisher to produce an edition of the play under Shakespeare's name, and shortly afterward the Royal Shakespeare Company performed the play. In 2001, the American professional premiere was staged by Pacific Repertory Theatre's Carmel Shakespeare Festival, which received positive reviews for the endeavor.